The surprise on your face is palpable this time, traveler. The chronicler sounds different again, you're thinking. More careful, more watchful. You're not wrong, friend. Tonight's tale has summoned forth the voice of shadows and silence, of those who move unseen through enemy territory. Can you hear it? The way each word is measured, weighed for its necessity. This is the voice of a scout, a spy. Someone who has learned that survival often depends on what you observe rather than what you say. The chronicle I'm about to share requires this particular perspective. It's a tale that unfolds not in the clash of steel or the roar of dragons, but in whispered conversations overheard from hiding spots, in intelligence gathered at great risk, in the patient art of watching and waiting. You see, after the fires of Greenest were extinguished and the immediate danger passed, there came a different kind of courage. The bravery of those willing to walk into the enemy's very heart, to count their numbers and learn their secrets. Tonight, I speak with the voice of those who risk everything for the simple, vital act of knowing one's enemy. So, settle quietly and make no sudden movements. Listen carefully. This is the tale of two souls who discovered that sometimes the most dangerous battlefield is the one where you cannot afford to be seen. The tale of the Raiders' Camp. The camp sprawled across the rocky plateau like a festering wound in the earth, its cook fires casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe with malevolent life. From their hidden position in the scrub brush, the scouts could see the organized chaos of the cult of the dragon's temporary stronghold. Tents arranged in precise rows, sentries walking predetermined routes, and at the center of it all, a massive pavilion that seemed to pulse with dark energy. The request had come from Governor Nighthill himself, his voice hoarse from the smoke and strain of the previous night's battle. "We need to know what they're planning," he had said, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the strategy table. "How many are there? What resources do they have? And most importantly, do they still have our people?" The raiders had withdrawn before dawn, leaving Greenest scarred but standing, its people alive but forever changed. Now, as the cultists settled into their temporary camp, the time for reconnaissance had come. Elara pressed herself flat against the rocky outcrop, her ranger's training allowing her to become one with the stone and shadow. Through her spyglass, she could see the intricate layout of the camp. The cultists had chosen their position well. High ground with clear sight lines in all directions, natural barriers on three sides, and only one easily defensible approach. "Count the purple robes," she whispered to her companion, a half-elf monk named Kael, whose pale eyes missed nothing. "The leaders wear deeper purples, almost black. The foot soldiers are in lighter shades." Kael nodded, his gaze cataloging every detail. The camp held perhaps 200 souls, cultists, mercenaries, kobolds, and a handful of other creatures that moved with predatory grace. But it was the prisoners that drew their attention. A cluster of makeshift cages near the eastern edge of the camp where the survivors of Greenest's population sat in dejected silence. Among them, if the reports were true, was Leosin Erlanthar himself. The monk had come to Greenest only days before the attack, claiming to be a researcher studying the cult's activities. His timing had been suspicious, but his knowledge of the cult's tactics had proved invaluable during the siege. Now, captured and bound, he might hold the key to understanding the cult's purpose. There. Kael pointed to a figure in the largest cage. Even from this distance, they could see the man's distinctive topknot and the way the other prisoners seemed to defer to him.
Leosin. He's alive, but...
Elara followed his gaze and saw the monk's condition. Even the most hardened prisoner would be broken by what they could see. Bruises, cuts, and the telltale signs of interrogation. The cult wanted something from him, and they were willing to extract it by any means necessary.
We need to get closer, she decided. Learn what we can, then report back.
The descent from their observation point required every ounce of skill they possessed. The rocky terrain provided cover, but the cultists had sentries posted at regular intervals. Elara moved like a shadow given form, her footsteps silent on the loose stone. Kael followed, his monk's training allowing him to flow like water around obstacles. They reached the camp's perimeter just as the sun reached its zenith. The heat made the air shimmer, providing additional cover for their movements. Elara found a position behind a cluster of supply wagons while Kael slipped between the tents, his unassuming appearance allowing him to blend with the camp's servants and laborers. From her hiding spot, Elara could hear conversations carried on the wind. The cultists spoke in common, draconic, and other languages, but certain words kept reoccurring. Queen, ritual, horde, sky reach. A group of higher-ranking cultists emerged from the central pavilion, their dark robes marked with silver dragon embroidery. They moved with purpose toward the prisoner cages, and Elara's heart sank as she realized what was about to happen.
"Bring the monk,"
commanded a woman whose voice carried the authority of absolute power. Her mask bore the likeness of a dragon's skull, its empty sockets seeming to stare into the very soul of anyone who met her gaze.
Rezmir grows impatient with his stubborn silence.
The guards hauled Leosin from the cage, his legs barely able to support his weight. But even in his weakened state, the monk's eyes remained clear and defiant. He surveyed the camp with the calculating gaze of a man who had not given up hope.
"Your order grows desperate,"
Leosin said, his voice carrying despite its hoarseness.
"If you must torture an old monk for information, perhaps your queen is not as all-powerful as you believe."
The masked woman backhanded him with casual cruelty.
"Your words are wind, monk, but your knowledge, that is substantial. Tell us of the Harper networks. Give us the names of those who stand against the cult, and your death will be quick."
Leosin spat blood into the dust.
"I have told you nothing, and I will tell you nothing. Your cult is a disease, and diseases are meant to be cured."
The interrogation continued, but Elara found herself focusing on other details. The supply wagons were filled with looted treasure. Silver chalices, golden jewelry, works of art that had been torn from Greenest's home and businesses. But there was something else. Eggs. Dragon eggs, carefully cushioned in silk and straw, each one the size of a small barrel. The cult wasn't just gathering wealth, they were gathering the means to breed dragons, an army of worms to serve their dark purpose. Meanwhile, Kael had worked his way closer to the central pavilion. The tent was massive, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting the five-headed dragon Tiamat in all her terrible glory. Guards stood at attention around its perimeter, but they were focused on external threats, not on a simple servant carrying water buckets. Inside the pavilion, he could hear voices raised in argument. The tent's occupants were debating strategy, their words carrying the weight of terrible decisions.
"The schedule must be maintained,"
said a voice thick with the accent of Thay.
The Red Wizards have invested too much in this enterprise to allow delays. And I have invested too much in this cult to see it destroyed by haste, replied another voice, this one belonging to a woman with the bearing of absolute authority. Resmir's plans require precision, not speed. Kael pressed closer to the tent wall, straining to hear more. The conversation revealed a complex web of alliances and betrayals, of ancient powers working toward a common goal. The cult was not acting alone. They had allies among the Red Wizards of Thay, and their ultimate objective was nothing less than the resurrection of Tiamat herself. The plan was ambitious beyond imagination. They would gather a horde, worthy of the Dragon Queen. Gold, gems, artifacts of power, and the lives of thousands. This treasure would fuel a ritual that would tear open the barriers between the material plane and the 9 hells, allowing Tiamat to return and claim dominion over all dragon kind. But first, they needed to transport their accumulated wealth to a fortress called Sky Reach Castle, a flying citadel that would serve as the base of their operations. The timeline was tight. The conjunction of planes that would make the ritual possible occurred only once every 500 years, and that time was rapidly approaching. A commotion outside the tent interrupted Kael's eavesdropping. One of the guards had spotted something suspicious, a glint of metal where none should be. Elara's position had been compromised. "Intruders in the camp!" the guard shouted, his voice carrying across the plateau. "Search every tent, every wagon, find them!" The camp erupted into organized chaos. Cultists poured from their tents, weapons drawn, while the camp's monstrous allies, kobolds, ambush drakes, and worse, began systematically searching every hiding place. Elara burst from her concealment, her bow singing as she loosed arrow after arrow at the pursuing cultists. Each shaft found its mark, but there were too many enemies and too little cover. She rolled behind a supply wagon as a volley of crossbow bolts splintered the wood around her. Kael abandoned stealth for speed, his monk's training allowing him to vault over tent ropes and slide beneath wagon wheels with fluid grace. He reached Elara's position just as a group of kobolds discovered her hiding spot. "Time to go," he said, his fists blurring as he struck down the first wave of attackers. Together they fought their way toward the camp's edge. Elara's arrows cleared a path while Kael's strikes dropped any enemy that came too close. But the cultists had advantages: numbers, position, and the fury of the righteous. The retreat became a running battle across the rocky terrain. Behind them, the camp's horn sounded, a deep, resonant note that seemed to shake the very mountains. It was a signal, Elara realized, a call for reinforcements, or perhaps a warning to other cult strongholds. They reached the rocky outcrop, where they had begun their reconnaissance, but the cultists were still in pursuit. Crossbow bolts whined through the air, and the howls of tracking beasts echoed across the plateau. "We have what we came for," Kael said, checking a wound on his arm where a kobold spear had found its mark. "The information about their plans, about Sky Reach Castle." Elara nodded, though her heart was heavy. "But we couldn't save the prisoners. Leosin and the others, they're still there." "Then we bring back help," Kael replied firmly. "We've learned their weaknesses, their schedule, their ultimate goal. The intelligence is worth more than any rescue attempt we could manage alone." As they made their way back towards Greenest, the scouts' camp faded into the distance behind them. But the memory of what they had seen, the eggs, the treasure, the terrible purpose driving the cult, would remain with them forever. The cult believed they were working toward the dawn of a new age, an era where dragons would rule and mortals would serve.
But knowledge was power, and power was the key to stopping even the most ambitious plans. The race to prevent Tiamat's return had begun. And so, this tale draws to a close. Though its echoes may linger in your dreams, the fire burns lower now. But don't despair, I've countless more stories waiting to be shared with you. If this tale stirred something within you, if it reminded you why magic still matters in this mundane world, then please light your own beacon. That glowing thumbs up tells the spirits of story that our fellowship grows stronger. Subscribe to our circle permanently and ring that notification bell. That way, you'll know the moment I return with new chronicles. The fire burns brightest when more souls gather around it, wouldn't you agree? Now, if that's the case, share this tale with another weary soul who needs it, reminding them adventure still exists. Tag a friend who would appreciate a good story by the fire. The more who believe, the more real these worlds become. And if you're new to our hearth, explore the playlist of chronicles that I've gathered. Tales of heroes and villains, love and loss, magic and mystery, each one carefully chosen for souls like yours. Until the fire calls us together again, may your own adventures be worthy of legend, and may you never lose the wonder that brought you here tonight. Travel or sleep well, brave soul. The long rest awaits your return.